Hey guys, welcome back to Digital Artcast. Thank you again for tuning in for another episode. We are continuing the theme from last time where we tried a bit of a different format where we're going to use the video interview this time. And of course, we are trying to keep up with you guys' demands for guests to come on the show. These episodes every time they air, they're always a bit exciting for me because we get to interview people that, maybe we got to talk to before, or someone that I haven't heard of before, or maybe even people that I've admired for a while. So I'm always grateful for your suggestions, and please keep them coming. I'm glad to keep doing these episodes, and hopefully wherever you are in the world, you are being safe during this horrible time that we're in at the moment. Today, we have a really great guest, someone that I've heard of before, but not got the chance to speak to in person at any point. So this will be a really interesting interview to dive into his mind and see the workings behind his artwork and his career. If you can please welcome along today's guest, Mr. Tim Fielder. Hey Tim, how's it going?
Hello, how you doing? Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course, it's an honor, man. Very, very glad that you could make time to come and talk to us. It's been
from NOLA. Hello from
yes,
NOLA.
When I kind of heard about you, it wasn't, I mean, it was you initially, obviously, but I think it was more like your book at the time that has just came out has definitely been making the rounds, and it was something that, a couple of people had pointed out to me that was out and people were talking about, especially in the Black community as well. For anybody who doesn't know you, Tim, just in case, can you just give us a quick intro about who you are, what you do?
Sure. My name is Tim Fielder, and I am a visual Afrofuturist and graphic novelist. And born in Tupelo, Mississippi, home of Elvis, and raised in Clarksdale, Mississippi, home of Robert Johnson. So, and I obviously didn't know either one of them. I've been doing visual Afrofuturism since I was a kid. I started 12, 13 years of age, somewhere around there. And but I've been doing comics since I was like 4 or 5, started drawing 3, 4, 5, that type of thing, and did comics because all my siblings did comics. I have 3 older brothers, a twin, and 2 older brothers.
Okay.
And that's what I did. And I eventually, segued from doing it as something for fun. Star Wars happened when I was, 10 years old, which blew my mind, like it did a lot of other people. And then I became a Star Wars head. About the same time I became a heavy metal magazine head, which you guys out that way would know as Metal Hurlant. Heavily into Mobius, Inky Bilal, Philippe Drouillet, Richard Corbin, one of the American guys here who I had the privilege of working with once in my career. And then made my way to New York City, which I've been stuck there for about almost 40 years. Wow. Going on 35, 40 years. I went there in January 7th, 1987. I lived permanently in New York City.
Wow. Yeah.
And been there for a while. And now my focus is, I did comics from 87 to about 99, 2000.
Okay.
Worked in the video game industry after the industry collapsed for about 2 years in terms of
You've got it.
In terms of all of I was trying to turn off my notifications. Like, you hear bling bling from that, because Windows, they're always telling you, it's going to be an update. Like,
I know, always awkward timing.
Right. You're like, really? But I
think Ubisoft, right? You've done some stuff with Ubisoft and a couple other games companies, right? As well.
Yeah, I worked for Ubisoft for about 1.5 years, and that was a miserable experience.
Okay.
It was terrible. But I learned a lot technically.
Yes.
Learned a whole lot. But if that, my friend Lou Talamo, who I started out my career with in games industry, would go on for years to work in the game industry. He
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, Tim, what happened to you was you had such a traumatic experience. It just basically turned you away from it." And it was true.
Yeah.
I basically, I never played video games. I
Right.
just
Okay.
didn't get into it, all
Right. Yeah.
because it was such a crazed, insane experience.
Yes.
But I respect video games and I respected the amount of craft, the technique that goes into it. So I
Yeah.
would go on to do spot, stuff for small game studios, things
Right.
like that for years, while also teaching. Did a ton of teaching. That was how I
Mm-hmm.
raised my kids, while also maintaining my developing my IPs.
Mm-hmm.
Worked for about 10 years on an independent animated film that I never finished.
Right.
And around 2013, once I left teaching heavy, 2012, 2013, I went back into comics.
Right. Yeah.
And that is when, everything began to change for me.
Right.
And so that's why, all the decision I made to go back into comics is what has ended me up here talking with you, basically.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, and then with the comic scene, I mean, have you kind of made the rounds on different companies? Is it kind of Marvel, DC, Image, Dark
Yeah, I did that
Horse?
earlier in my career.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Back
Yeah.
in the '90s, I did the Marvel thing. Was there. Freelance
Yeah.
with them for about 3, 4 years. From like I
Yeah.
think my first Marvel gig was in 90,
Okay.
90,
Yeah.
and
The
then but
OG.
that was
Yeah.
like a posters for Conan magazine, Conan the
Right.
Barbarian. And
Cool.
then about 2 years later, I think I ended up doing uh, working for Marvel Music, and I did. It took me about, I guess, a year, two
Right.
years to do a graphic novel called Dr. Dre, Man with a Cold, Cold Heart, which was
Okay.
based on Dr. Dre, fully painted in gouache. Never
Nice.
again. Never do that again.
Yeah.
Now I guess that was the thing that turned me to digital, man. Because my
Yeah.
brother told me, "Yo, man, why don't you paint this in digital?" I was like, "Nah, man, I want to feel the paint." I literally was saying that kind of idiot
Yeah.
stuff. Like, I want to feel the paint.
Yeah.
And
That's
after months of doing it, sleepless nights, I was like, "This is insane."
yeah. Yeah.
So
Move to
that
digital.
book really turned me completely towards digital,
Right. Okay.
and
Yeah.
I've never gone back. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even I think the Marvel DC universe, especially the comics back in the day, was a very hard slog. It was a lot of really hard work. And I know actually before I got into video game stuff that I do now, or even concept art, it was mostly comics that I loved and wanted to do early on. But of course, I learned for that world that it's a very not only competitive place to be, but also a very difficult place to be. So I think I
yeah,
watched an
it can
interview.
be.
Yeah, watched an interview back in the day with Carrie Randolph. I don't know if you know Carrie at all, but yeah, Carrie, he was also a black comic artist, and he was
Yeah,
talking on there
I
just
know Carrie.
yeah, and again, he used to talk about just how difficult it was and like how sleepless nights and got paid so little, and I was like, yeah, I'll just I'll go
Well,
and
see,
try and
that's the
go,
interesting
yeah,
thing about Carrie. Carrie has aside from like excellence, which is what he does now.
yeah, yeah, of course,
Carrie has had, I know that he has to work hard to do what he has to do, but Carrie's had
yeah,
a much more illustrious career than I have in
oh
direct
yeah,
in the
yeah,
direct sales market comics. I'd never, I did
hmm
my stint with Marvel
hmm
in the '90s. When I
right,
got back, I mean, I never even really tried to get work with Marvel or DC because that
hmm
industry is already going through its transition
yes,
now,
yeah,
where
yeah.
it's just not as prominent as it was.
Of course, yeah, definitely. I think even when I was getting into Carrie's work, that was in the early 2000s when a lot of that kind of dot-com boom was kind of sinking and there was other stuff happening. But yeah, definitely, comics is a volatile place to work, but rewarding as if you can really get into it. So
Right.
yeah. So then, of course, you're making your own stuff now. So one of your books, Infinitum, which has been out and has obviously been getting attention.
It had.
Um, yes. So what is, I suppose, because the term, as we talked about it, is Afrofuturism. I don't know too much about it, so if you could, or for people again who don't like me, who don't know about it,
Sure.
what is that term kind of relating to when you talk about it?
Okay, so I'll break down what Afrofuturism is, and keep in mind my definition of it is just mine. All right,
Right. Okay.
but
Yeah.
Afrofuturism is a modality in which you have the intersection of race
Okay.
politics,
Mm-hmm.
societal and social wars, technology, science fiction, speculative theory, and those things mash together to create form.
Right.
And the form, which for me is comics,
Mm-hmm.
right, could be anything. It could be fashion design. It could be politics. It could be anything. It's basically any act that is engaged in by a person of color or a creator of color to create subject matter that pretty much operates within the Black experience.
Right. Okay.
Like Lovecraft Country would be considered, I guess, a form of Afrofuturism.
Okay.
Uh,
Right.
yeah, uh, uh, certainly that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Black Panther, obviously, particularly the movie.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Superhero comics could be aspects of it could be considered Afrofuturism, but superheroes kind of operate in their own kind of sector.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. So
but
something like Luke Cage would be more kind of present day, less futurism.
so Luke Cage is a superhero comic.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
Which people can say, well, okay, can they overlap? Yes,
Okay.
but
Right.
for me, Luke Cage is like a straight superhero comic
Right. Right. Okay.
featuring
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
black character.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It had some elements to it, but that's more of a superhero comic. It's more in that area.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
but when you're dealing with, say, the Black Panther movie, that's when you're dealing with me. From my perspective, something that's
Mm-hmm.
Afrofuturism,
Right. Okay.
because that was
Okay.
purposely embedded in there
Yeah.
into the content. My book, Infinitum, an
Mm-hmm.
Afrofuturist tale,
Yes.
is straight Afrofuturism. But because the story takes place over such a huge span of time,
Mm-hmm.
it tends to deal with multiple aspects of Afrofuturism based upon the period the story is set in at a given point. And that was done
Right.
on purpose.
Right.
The story
Okay.
involves a guy by the name of Aja Oba, who was an African warlord in the ancient Africa,
Okay.
who was
Yeah.
cursed with the gift of immortality by a spurned lover because he does
Okay.
something really terrible. And he is cursed with immortality and forced to live through millennia and eons of time,
Mm.
seeing all those folks who he cares about, he loves, basically rise and wither to dust. The
Mm-hmm.
civilizations, the
Mm-hmm.
environments he engages it within, rise and fall to dust. And it's a story that's designed to immerse ourselves in race and then move beyond it.
Okay. Right.
And so I tried to do something that was expansive. So that's from a narrative, the visual, from the written narrative, visual narrative. I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
do the same thing, but to
Mm-hmm.
produce something that was very much a homage to the projects that I love, like heavy
Okay.
metal.
Right.
I love the visual stuff. The stories of heavy metal were always interesting, I would say. But
Yeah.
visually, when you get into something like Linkau
Mm-hmm.
or Den,
Mm-hmm.
you,
Yeah.
stuff always had its cultural impact in its rawness with the sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but visually, it was always something that was, as it had such an impact
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
world culture. Without heavy metal, you wouldn't have Alien, you wouldn't have Blade Runner.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, definitely those things kind of started the trend, and it was hilarious a couple of years ago to watch South Park doing a homage to heavy metal back in the day,
Sure.
and obviously playing on one aspect of it, which you said was more of the sexuality, but like, yeah, like definitely that that series has its place in time and history and comics and visual storytelling. But yeah, I think there's so much that leads into other things. So for you, how did that start early in your career? I mean, you obviously are now have you wrote the book, you've published it, you've drawn it. Where was the spark for Infinitum? Where do you think that came from initially?
Well, that from different areas, but the core of it is twofold. One, I was tired of seeing black characters with any kind of agency be killed in
Okay, right,
films.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, the
Mm.
brothers got to die in Night of the Living Dead. Brothers got to die. Brothers got to die in Leviathan. Brother
Yeah.
has to be a secondary character or a
Hmm.
tertiary character, or he has to be
Right.
made to give justification to the white savior to go save the day, right? And notice I haven't mentioned black women at all because they
Of
would
course.
oftentimes not be present or be completely erased.
Yeah.
And so that was one of my motivating factors to do Infinitum, was to do a character who would not die. He would
Okay.
be,
I get
you
it
know,
now. Yeah.
that's what the whole immortality trope is. I mean, and there's nothing new about that. I mean, it's done in
Yeah.
Highlander. It's done in all
Of
kinds of
course.
stories out there. Octavia Butler had this really amazing immortal in her, my favorite
Hmm.
book by her called Wild Seed.
Hmm.
And then you have the fact that I wanted to do a fully rendered graphic novel
Hmm.
featuring a black character in black spaces
Right.
that was just as rendered as any other stuff out
Hmm.
there,
Hmm.
but from a graphic novel perspective. But I also wanted to do something that was just as rendered as any cinematic feature.
Right.
I
Okay.
wanted to do something featuring epic stories, epic settings, everything as big as anything Akira Kurosawa did with his films.
Oh wow. Okay.
And
Yeah.
so that was the intention. So that's why, there are these, of course, I was cursing myself while I was doing it, like, yo,
Hmm.
what were you thinking? You wanted to do all these huge battle sequences,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to do that. But then you have to sit there and paint that stuff out.
Yeah. Of
That's
course.
why I'm home.
The stress that would involve. Yeah, I think it's even Kurosawa you were talking about. Like, I mean, I think there's so many people generationally that have pulled from his work because, yeah,
Sure.
the
There would be no Star Wars without the Hidden Fortress.
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, Star Wars. I mean, again, people talk about how much that invented, but yeah, Lucas obviously had to pull from somewhere, right? He had to have some
Yeah,
inspiration
we
that
all
was,
do that. I pull from Star Wars. I'm a Star
yeah,
Wars
yeah,
kid. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm the same. I mean, I'm heavy metal and Star Wars all day. Like, I mean, I've got my arms are covered in Star Wars tattoos. Like, I
There you
mean,
go.
so it's, but yeah, but like, I think it's these key moments in history that our generations of artists, or your generations, and so on and
Mhm.
so forth, have all pulled from the same kind of pool. And even growing up, Blade Runner was a big influence to me as well. So cyberpunk is now a thing. 20, 30 years later, but yeah, those roots are deep for a lot of people. But then it's like, yeah, I think now we're almost living in a. I mean, difficult for me to say because I'm not part of that community, but I definitely feel like we're living in a kind of a black media revolution where there is definitely a time where, of course, Black Panther came out. That was huge for the black community. That was a huge thing for everybody, indeed, Marvel especially, but definitely for the black community, that was a huge step forward in terms of just cinema and storytelling and including in that culture so much. And now, of course, we have things like your book, of course, now, and other stories that are now also coming out. I mean, unfortunate, of course, about Chadwick, unfortunately passed away recently, but his legacy is now going to live on. They're working on TV series, they're working in games. So, I mean, I think it is definitely a crazy good time, and I think it's also hopefully a time that other black artists, younger black artists, will now pull from. And then, of course, when they grow up, they'll be like, oh, man, going to see Black Panther and the cinema was such an iconic moment for me, and it really, really got me into. I think it's just such a great time. Even when we spoke to Philip Booty Jr., Phil was saying about when he was younger, he was actually acting, very early on in Hollywood, and he actually stepped away from Hollywood because the only roles he could get as a young black guy was stuff like, like you say, things where he'd be killed, or he was a mugger or a criminal, or there was no roles that really presented him as just a normal person. And I think that's why he said working on Black Panther was so important to him, and why it was such a big moment, because it was a term of cinema, that was putting Black culture in a very positive light. So I think that's what we need, is more stories like that, like yours, that are telling these stories that are very positive for the Black community.
Well,
Yeah.
well, I will add, I don't, and this is where I kind of disconnect the Black Panther and Infinitum mode.
Yeah.
Infinitum is not always positive.
Okay, right.
What I wanted to do was a story that was every bit as complex and rancid and epic and technologically advanced and beautiful to look at as George R. Martin. I wanted to
Okay.
do something where the characters were not perfect.
Okay, right.
But the thing I wanted to show was that the characters had agency.
Right.
They had the ability to decide for themselves how they chose to live or didn't choose to live. That was
Okay.
not made by the typical tropes that you see in basic storytelling,
Right.
I think, and I wanted to do that because it's certainly been done in the prose environment. And keep in mind, when using the term Afrofuturism, that was done by my colleague, Mark Derry, our
Okay.
journalist and cultural critic, back in '94. So Mark did that, but the practice of showing Black characters within speculative fiction has been around since, forever.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if we're going to deal with it just purely within the modern or quasi-modern experience, then you can go back as far as Martin Delany, who did Blake's in the Huts of Africa. W.E.B. Du Bois did The Comet. And then you had, numerous, well, not numerous, but several books that were done, Delany, Sam Delany, Octavia Butler. And of course, now you have numerous Black authors, prose writers.
Yes.
P. Jelly Clark, is a prominent one. Today Thompson, N.K. Jemisin, are those folks. And you have variants of that.
Right.
But within the graphic novel space, it's kind of just now starting to hit, where you have independent Afrofuturist comics done by people like Greg Anderson, Ely Say, and Jason Reeves. You have a number of writers and artists who are doing stuff like that. But in the mainstream, that's where we're starting to just now hit, or at the beginning of it. Infinitum would be the first Afrofuturist graphic novel from a major Big Five publisher, which is HarperCollins.
Right.
But you've had 2-3 years prior to that with the adaptation of Kindred by Octavia Butler, by Damien Duffy and John Jennings. They did Kindred. They did Parable of the Sower. I think they're working on the third book now. Parable of the Talents. I think that's the one they're working on. And then what else? The other John Jennings, David Brain they adapted After the Rain. So it's a lot of those kind of Black speculative books that are coming out. That have come out. After the Rain came out, a week or two before my book did. All from Abrams' Megascope. Or at least Abrams, that sphere.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that's starting to happen now. And my next book will be doing Maddie's Rocket, which is the book I was known for before that.
Right.
That's a graphic novel. You can't even buy this thing anymore. But that's because I self-published it in my own apartment, my studio. So, but that's the one I'm revisiting now, and that'll be a trilogy, along with my memoirs called Black Metropolis, because there's so much insane stuff I've gone through over the last 35 years. Because unlike a person who kind of like, you were talking about the actor who stepped away from Hollywood, I never really stepped away from Afrofuturism. I did it out all of my work, and I paid the dear, dear price for having done that. It kind of excludes you out of certain type of considerations, and beyond the typical personal issues that most insane artists have, like myself.
Right.
Those things, they make not just a career, but they make a life. But
Right.
the challenge, you see it a lot with uh, the ascension of Black artists over a certain age in the fine art space who've been
Right.
ignored most of their careers. You're really starting to see that. See
Right.
them really just come to that ascension. They, once you start, I started 55 years ago, and now there's this demand for their work because we're in a period where things are moving away from this kind of very staid, kind of overdone
Mhm.
viewpoint, and it's becoming more. The word they use is diverse.
Of course.
But there's that. But then there's the economic component in it. People,
Right.
you only have so many versions of Superman.
Yeah. Yep.
Now what I think the next one Ta-Nehisi Coates is doing is maybe it's a Black Superman.
Right. Yeah.
There's a part of me that would prefer to see him just do regular Superman. Can we get his point of view on that? But those will be the things that will be. That's what's interesting about today is that we have so much unmined material
Right.
from the Black perspective or from indigenous perspectives
Right.
that it will take us decades to even begin to get through that.
Yeah, I think it's even recently, even again talking with some of my friends for the panel we done last year. They linked me to Yasuke, which is coming out. Netflix have made that series, the anime series, is coming out soon, and that also tells the tale of the Black Samurai, where people again thought that was something that was invented just for now, just to bring attention to it. But then people are like, no, that's a story, that's a true story, that's something that was based on years and years ago. It's been around for a long time. And now, like you said, we're just getting to the point where they're wanting diversity, so now they're looking for these stories, and yeah, because a lot of people, have seen the trailer and been like, yeah, that's great, fantastic, they're doing these stories finally, and I mean that's got to be just hopefully just a positive experience for yourself and other Black artists that now there is this opportunity to be included in these stories, to be included in these
Right.
productions.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. It's so fascinating to I'm not 20 or 30 or 40 anymore. I'm in my mid 50s.
Okay.
And it's so interesting because I've never been this productive in my life.
Right. Okay.
Literally when I finish this interview, I have to get to finishing out my for a pitch for my memoirs, which I thought I was done last week, but then I got some feedback. You need to add this, you add that. And that's part of the process of just a general working writer.
Right.
You're preparing a pitch for a company.
Right.
And it's so weird for me because that was not something I ever thought I would do.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's also something that, folks who look like me, who operate like me, trust me, I know because I was there, are not really welcome into those kind of speculative spaces. I've been on a kick where I've been looking at the work of Rob Bottin, the visual effects artist who did the visual effects for The Thing.
Okay.
John Carpenter's The Thing, because that's so, I find that film so fascinating because Carpenter really did something that not just paid homage to the idea of the haunted house and the alien from another planet, but he took it in a different direction. And he created a film that when it first came out, it initially failed. But it's now gone on to be like one of the columns, the primary support systems of horror.
Yes.
And because it was so cutting edge and so ahead of its time in the way the creature and the way the biology of the creature. I always think about that guy putting his hand into the guy's face. It fits in there, and you could see he's absorbing him inside. There's no biting. Yeah. It's just and it's like wow. Which I'm not even a horror film person. I get scared when I see horror films. I can't watch it easily.
Yeah.
But so what's starting to happen now is that the world is now open to us.
Yes.
But I'm still very much productive, and the type of work I do, let me knock on some wood here, appears to be in demand. And I am embracing as many smart opportunities as I can, because I'm not, as I was in my 20s and 30s. You just take whatever comes to you, and I was doing that
Right.
up till recently, but now I can't. Now I have to focus just on the work that I'm supposed to be doing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, like you said, it's just a great time, I think, and you wished it would have came maybe sooner or something, but then I think it's definitely great that there is now this opportunity, and like even talking again about Philip, Phil Boutte has now obviously launched his own studio as well that's focuses on diversity and of course Black inclusion. So he is now one of the first concept studios in Western society, mostly in America, that is all Black people, working people in the industry. So yeah, there's these studios popping up. There's these opportunities. There's and of course people laid the footwork for that. Way back in the day, there was people, comics artists and writers that were Black that were writing stories, and one of them that cast my mind back even was I forget. He said the guy's surname, but it's Kevin. Is it Kevin Grevox? Grevox.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Kevin Reviews, yeah.
yeah, because he obviously.
Underworld.
Yep,
Yep.
100% Underworld. Yeah, so like yeah, those things have been around, but he was even at that point pitching Underworld as a film because he tried so hard to get into comics for years and was knocked back. But then of course once he had the film, then of course all the stuff comes raining in. So like yeah, I think it's just a great time to be included in the world because there's so much opportunity, right?
Right, and also to Kevin's credit, he kind of like set up the template for that. It's like
Yes.
he did. I remember seeing with my brother. We went to see Underwear, and we were just like, "Whoa,
Yeah, me
he
too.
did it!
Yeah.
He did it!" I didn't
Yeah.
initially know it was Kevin who did that stuff.
Neither did I, yeah, till later on. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
Mm.
But and I've met him only like once. But Kevin is showed the strength of creating a viable IP.
Yes. Yes.
And an IP that has or the ability to create an IP or to showcase not just the IP, but the ability to create an IP
Yes.
that can stream over different mediums. And that's
Yes.
one of the things that is important to me as an artist is to
Yeah.
be able to do that. So it's like Infinitum, is a graphic novel, but I can say with a 90% certainty that Infinitum will be either a streaming show or a movie. That's
Right.
just going to happen.
Yep.
It has nothing to do with me at this point. It's
Yeah.
the economic system, the media system almost demands that, if here's something Infinitum is basically a storyboard.
Yeah.
Self-contained, 280 something page, fully painted
Right.
storyboard, and
Hmm.
you can see that it's either make an terribly expensive film, or it'll make a an 8 years, 5 to 8 year streaming series.
Right. Okay.
It's going to be a hell of a role for the main character,
Yeah.
because he's going to be the only person that appears in it from one
Yeah.
season to the next, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so those are the things that were not available to me as a younger artist that I'm now able to you know to engage in. I was telling my wife today. I said, I would have preferred the opportunities, the financial stuff, which hasn't happened yet,
Yeah.
but I would have preferred. Man, I wish this could have happened when I was younger,
Of
but I
course.
wouldn't
Yeah.
know what to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what you're saying. Maybe it's just the experience that you would have needed and the time,
Yeah.
and yeah. Yeah. So
When the payday comes, I can say that I'm not gonna go out and buy a pink Lamborghini.
yeah.
Yeah, man, I've always wanted a pink Lamborghini with
Yeah.
yellow stripes on it. That's not gonna happen
Yeah.
because when you're older, I just want to be comfortable. I want to be able to do my work. I want to be able to
Yes.
help uh, not just younger people, but I want to be able to help artists who are in my generation who didn't get that break.
Of course. Yeah.
I want to do that. I want to not just do graphic novels. I want to do films.
Yeah.
I'm working with both of my siblings on that,
Yeah. Yeah.
who are filmmakers, and, and
Right.
and that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
My agent is Erball. Herbal Media, which is owned by my brother Boston Fielder, and he's been fantastic in kind of not just hand holding,
Hmm.
but getting me through the process of taking my IP to
Right.
this next level. This is aside from him being his own, screenwriter and filmmaker,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, and so that's where things are going now. And it's so weird because you're like, well, isn't your focus the graphic novels? My focus is the IP,
Yeah.
and meaning that in whatever form I'm in, whether
Hmm.
it be film or streaming or
Hmm.
or comics or graphic novels or
Yeah.
audiobooks, which is the next thing we got to tackle.
Yeah.
I want to be able to do stuff that's of um, of quality,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's something that you should be prepared to put the effort in, whatever medium you're working in.
Yeah, you want to put your best foot forward, and especially like you says, if it gets shipped into like a Netflix series or whatever, or Amazon or whoever ends up doing it. But yeah, like you want to make sure that it is presented in a way that you feel is consistent with what you had envisioned, and obviously what you want to see on the screen. So I mean, with Infinitum, I mean, this story, like you says, can run for years and years. Do you feel like that's something you would be adding to the lore as you go as well, or be changing, or do you think the book in itself would be fine to be put out into the world and then live online as a series for many years without you really getting too involved with it again?
Interesting question. If I had to, a lot of things that change just because you age and the times change. For me, up till the early 2000s, like I came up with the storyline for Infinitum around 2004, right?
Right.
I was already in New York, but I moved to Harlem.
Right.
And I remember telling my brother the stories. We walked down
Hmm.
town from 139th to 125th
Hmm.
uh, to Magic Johnson Theater, and I told him the story, and he said, "Man, you should do that." Now I wouldn't know at the time that it would take another uh, 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 15 years
Wow.
to get
Yeah.
around to doing it,
Yeah.
but
But you done it. You done it.
I did it. I did it.
Hmm.
But I guess the goal is, in trying to make sure I don't lose track of the question here. The goal is everything in its time.
Hmm. Yeah.
Everything in its time. So for me, up till the early 2000s or up till the Star Wars prequels hit, my dream was always to do a film that would play with the 20th century Fox. That was up because when you did it that way, it meant it was real.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that world doesn't exist anymore.
Right. Yeah.
That world, I mean, it exists.
But no, like
The
it used to.
corporate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's theaters do not dominate.
Yeah.
COVID
I would
has
say TV and streaming services are really now where everything is, especially
that's
stuff like
where it is. So
yeah.
for me, I was just looking at Concrete Cowboy last night with Idris Elba and the young brother from Stranger Things. And by the way,
Oh,
Idris would
okay.
be a fantastic Oba from Infinitum. I'm hoping he's like, yeah, you should do that. Let me take a look at it, right? But
Yeah.
uh, that was a brilliant movie. It
Okay.
was really good. Concrete Cowboy was really good. Very
Yeah.
subtle. I love the way they depicted the characters, and it
Hmm.
didn't fall into easy or trite archetypes or even stereotypes. But it dealt with the real, but it did it in a very elegant way,
Okay.
and it showed a part of life that you generally don't see.
Hmm.
Which is black modern cowboys and the type of lives and their loves, their families, and
Right.
the hardships, but the successes and the simple joys. And
Hmm.
I love that film. Uh, 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 and that's what I want to do.
Right.
But I want to do it within this science fiction scenario.
Hmm.
And so that means because the world has changed, I now see a place for my work within that
Right.
place.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
also yeah. No, I was going to say I think it's interesting to see the gap between you finishing the story and it getting published. Because, for instance, talking to Idris Elba as a cowboy, you know, the last thing I saw him in that as a cowboy was Stephen King's Dark Tower, and then of course, you know, that was an interesting way to push that film as well, because it was so long between the source material being published and then the film actually getting made. So you always take yourself, well, was that the way King envisioned it? Was that the way he thought it was going to look like when he had it in his mind? So yeah, I think that's going to be interesting if, you know, your project gets picked up by a streaming service, like how
It
that's going
will
to be
be.
interpreted.
That's not
Yeah.
if, it's a matter of when.
Well, there you go. So I mean, like,
And
yeah,
again, I
yeah,
just say when, it's because even if you're not in the corporate miasma of what's going on, you could just look on your screen and see what's
yeah,
happening.
yeah.
So all it takes is not a huge jump to see that, oh, there are clearly discussions going on,
Right, yeah.
you know, without having to go into it. That's
Mhm.
just as I'm as certain that will happen as you and I are sitting here talking to each other, because it
No,
has
no.
nothing to do with us. It's its own economic engine.
Right, yeah. Another thing.
That's what
So,
that is.
so you would obviously want to be heavily involved in it, right? I mean, would you
Oh,
want to have like a
absolutely. I
yeah,
do. I'm not a proponent of optioning a project and just saying, okay, you guys got it. I'll just sit here and wait. I'm not trying
right,
to do that. I'm more in the lines of the S.A. Corey guys who do the Expanse. They're in the
right.
writers' room. They're involved in the project. I'm more like Keith Knight,
Mhm.
one of my colleagues who does Woke for Hulu. You know,
Yeah,
he was just there
yeah,
because purely just from the. I mean, I'm saying this for the perspective of other folks, not just Black creators, but any creators.
right.
When you create something that catches on, whether it be a prose
Mhm.
book, something nonfiction or fiction,
Yeah.
or it's a comic or it's a theatrical piece,
Mhm.
doesn't matter. If you get something that can parlay, make the jump to another medium, yeah, why shouldn't you be involved in that process?
Of course. Yeah,
Why
yeah. You
shouldn't
want
you
to
be now?
yeah.
I would imagine there's some producers like, well, I'd rather not have that. But yeah, we're not talking about that now. We're talking
Yeah.
about you taking um, a spot of ownership in your project, your IP, being translated to another medium. Of course, you
Yeah.
should do that.
Yeah.
You know, of course, you should do that.
Yeah.
I'm sure Ben Edlund, who did the Tick, created his comic book character, and
Right.
now you've had what 20 years of the Tick. I'm sure he's
Yeah.
not whining about that. He's okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
that doesn't mean you still can't make graphic novels. You
Yes.
know,
Yes.
Sam Shepard, who was the famous American playwright, did movies, he did plays,
Yeah.
he did, you know, he directed, he just did acting. He was, you
Yeah.
know, so there's nothing wrong with being a multidisciplinary artist or
Yes.
multidisciplinary cartoonist or creator. And
Yeah.
that's where my interests lie now. Because
Yeah.
my goals, because, you know, I mean, Gordon, I'll just say it, you know, doing Infinitum was a big deal.
Yeah.
It's been really, really, I mean, hell, you're in Scotland. I'm in New Orleans. You know, you're
Yeah.
in Scotland. I'm in New Orleans. And it means that my work is starting to penetrate beyond just this localized environment that I was in for a while. Now it's
Yeah.
worldwide. Just
Yes.
because, I mean, you can buy Infinitum in Scotland.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm
You
saying.
go to the
International.
bookstore, you can get it. You
Yeah.
know, or if you
Yeah.
don't do it, you can order it from Amazon UK or what's the other Waterstones?
Yeah.
Waterstones? You
Yeah.
can buy it, you know, that's a huge deal. So having hit that goal, now the goal of man, I wish I could get a book that's now done. Now what's the next goal? The next goal is to can I take this independent project that I had done and now
Yeah.
bring that into mainstream recognition with Maddie's Rocket?
Yes.
You know,
Mhm.
can I do my memoirs, Black Metropolis, and
Mhm.
tell that story, the history of visual Afrofuturism over the last 35 years as I lived it? So it's not just functioning as a memoir, it's functioning as a memoir, it's functioning as a huge art book.
Mhm.
But of course, now do I do it in one volume or two volumes?
Yeah.
You know, Katsuhiro Otomo did Kaba. He did Kaba 1 and he did Kaba 2. You know, Shiro, who did Ghost in the Shell, did Intro and Depot 1, Intro Depot 2, and Intro and Depot 3. So I'm thinking, well, is this something I should just put out in one huge book?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's a volume. Maybe I should focus on the first volume. So these are the questions I'm having to deal with.
Yeah, because you've done the kind of the legwork initially on building that universe, putting that into published and then into paper, and now of course you're trying to just expand on those ideas as much as you can to,
Right.
bring out a variation of, because like you said, even if like Infinitum is something that people would take to, but then maybe aren't particular on, then you've obviously got Diesel Funk as well. You've got other projects that can be used that are the similar vein. So as
I
diverse
have
as you
the
can be.
project, man, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're all the same, right? We've all got these hundreds of projects. But I remember we were at an event a couple of years ago, and it was an artist from Pixar, John something, but I forget the guy's name. But he said a quote that at that talk that was really interesting, where he was like, "Make your ideas, because when you die, if you don't make those ideas, those ideas die with you." And we were kind of like, God, that's really powerful when you think about it. You know what I mean? Because like there is so many people who have these stories, but never get to tell them, never get to publish them, never get to, put them out into the world and have a legacy to leave behind. But now you've done that, right? You've done the
Well,
thing that is the hardest thing.
I've done part of it. So
Yes.
let me just take a few moments to just speak on that.
Yeah.
I will start this off. We all got a dirt bath coming to us.
Yeah.
Everybody,
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
exceptions. You can be rich, you can be
Mm-hmm.
poor,
Mm-hmm.
black, green, white, yellow, everything in between. We
Mm-hmm.
all are eventually going to croak. It
Yeah.
will happen.
Yeah.
Some people it happens later. Some people
Mm-hmm.
it happens earlier. Some
Mm-hmm.
people it happens about midway through.
Mm-hmm.
But it's coming for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
And I agree with what that Pixar artist said, is
Mm-hmm.
that when you die, your stories
Mm-hmm.
go with you.
Yeah.
The only time you can make a difference, it's all based upon what you leave behind. Because you
Mm-hmm.
can't take anything with you.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
can't take it with you physical.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only evidence you have that you were here are the memories and the recordings and the printings and the physical objects. We know the
Yes.
Egyptians were here because we
Mm-hmm.
have a library of content, a
Mm-hmm.
physical, huge objects,
Mm-hmm.
sitting in the middle of a desert. It's like,
Yeah.
that what these guys call the Egyptians there, right? So we, particularly as creators, have an
Mm-hmm.
obligation to fulfill that mandate. That was
Yeah.
something I didn't take. I knew it was important,
Mm-hmm.
but now it's super important.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's why, and I go back to Black Metropolis again.
Mm-hmm.
I literally have 35 years of work that outside of the few people who showed up to the gallery shows that I put up twice. First
Right.
one was roughly a week and a half at
Mm-hmm.
NYU Gallatin Gallery. The second one was up for about 2 months at the Hammond's House in Atlanta, Georgia. But
Right.
outside of folks who visited that show,
Mm-hmm.
that work has never been seen.
Right. Yeah.
And it's occurred to me over the last 4 years, but heavily over the last really 6 months to a year, because we're in what I call my friend Ronaldo Anderson calls it Afrofuturism 2.0.
Right.
But I'll just call it the age of visual Afrofuturism. It's the ascension where not just written Afrofuturism, but visual Afrofuturism is coming into being. It's important to me, and I think important to the community of Afrofuturists out there, that this work, my work, be shown, because I've done it over such a long period of time and I never stopped.
Right.
So that work needs to be shown because it's an important document to the history, not just of Afrofuturism, but to the history of Black people within the prism of
Mm-hmm.
speculative content.
Right. Yeah.
It's an extension of what Pedro Bell and Overton Lloyd did for Parliament Funkadelic with their album covers. So she say I can't believe I forget this name. The Asian brother who did all of the artwork for Earth, Wind and Fire, the album covers.
Right.
That's what I feel like my work is, and I'm not the only person who's done work, but I know where I stand now. I know where my spot is. But if you don't put the work out,
right,
then no one will ever know your spot.
Yeah.
It's like, what is it? History is written by the victors.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true. I didn't think that was true, but it's very true.
Yes.
Meaning, if I don't put out a document that showcases the work that I've done over the 35 years into the world, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And that applies for anyone. If you're young and you feel like, oh, my work's not good enough, and like, nobody cares.
Yeah.
You have to do the work anyway.
Yeah.
And sometimes I was just talking with a cartoonist, a colleague who's, in his own way has made significant moves in the industry and kind of operated a little bit somewhat obscure like me, but he's just done this TED Talk.
Okay.
R. Allen Brooks is his name, and he's got 1 million views.
Yeah.
And we were just talking, and I wasn't successful in the comic book industry. I wasn't. But I'm actually somewhat successful in the trade industry, the book trade.
Right. Yeah.
Stephen King, Raina Telgemeier. I mean, I'm not Raina Telgemeier. I'm not Jerry Kraft. I'm not. But I'm in.
Yeah, you're a published author.
Which is incredibly hard to do.
Yes.
By a mainstream Big Five publisher. So I recognize I made history just by doing that.
Yeah.
But now, in order for me to get my legacy out, because it's about legacy, I have to do it again. Then I have to do it again. Then I have to do it again.
Right.
That's the important. You have an obligation to release your work. It is not enough to do the work and it stays locked away for no one to see it.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Some people may be okay with that. I'm not.
Yeah, of course.
Because I know what it's like to work for multiple decades. No one takes you seriously. No one looks at your work because no one's seen your work. Yeah. And you give them that power to determine whether or not your work should be seen or not. I did a long time doing that. Also, another thing I would say for digital artists.
Yeah.
I won't go into the name, but there was this one guy who was a department head that I used to teach. And I never learned Maya. I've never said this public. I never learned Maya. I think I may have said it on Painted in Color. I never learned Maya. And I was released from that position. And for about 10 years, I measured my worth as a creator. Even though I'm the IP guy, I can design characters, I've taught for years, training other people on how to do that. But I measured my own artistic worth on whether or not I knew a piece of freaking software.
Yeah.
The irony being that 10 years to 15 years later, the company that owned 3ds Max, which is the software I use, bought Maya.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking online 3 days ago on YouTube, ILM released a promotional video on the Stagecraft 2 that they use for The Mandalorian. Right now, my thing is trying to learn Unreal because that's going to enhance what I do within the comic space because I can model anything. Well, I'm like, okay, I don't want to have to draw this stuff because I did the amount of work I did on Infinitum, which was all digital. I mean, I did a lot of 3D stuff to it. I can't do another book like that, not physically.
Yeah.
It would kill me. So I have to now begin to step up the amount of 3D content I use within my graphic novels, which is fine because I model it. I can model 13 hours straight, no problem. Drawing 13 hours straight, not so much.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that I'll never learn Maya now
Mm-hmm.
because I learned the trick.
Mm-hmm.
Software is irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
It's the content that you can create, your ideas.
Yeah.
So Blender has now got what's that? Is it called Eevee?
Yeah, the real-time renderer. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the one and I'm like, here, Bob, here we are, now a piece of free software does like real-time rendering, not like Unreal, of course, which is my friend Mark, who owns his own game company,
Mm-hmm.
just rendered out this 3K system because his computer is crap, but just
Mm-hmm.
rendered out this beautiful real-time sequence in 8 minutes. That's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
its film resolution is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter now. The software is immaterial.
Yes.
Can you get access to the means to create your content? If you want to be animator 451 in section A for whatever
Mm-hmm.
studio that may or may not go out of business and
Mm-hmm.
everybody laid off, then fine, do that.
Yeah.
But if you're a creator,
Mm-hmm.
create. And
Yeah.
don't worry about the standards. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
certain software you should know. You should know at least one 3D software program.
Yeah.
Yes, you should know Photoshop.
Yeah.
If you can program like my oldest boy is learning to do, he knows Python. He's in college. So proud of him. He's a physics and computer science major. Hey man,
Wow.
I don't know nothing about that. I don't know anything about that, but he does that because he was a little boy when I was a game designer, so that's what
Right.
he's always wanted to do.
Right.
Talk to kid, well, son, just because I did that doesn't mean you have to do it. You can do whatever you want. And when they finally hit you at the age of 8, I want to be a game designer like my father before me, but he does it in the voice of Star Wars. Yeah, but then he's now 21. I'm like, you sure you want to do it? Oh, I've always wanted to do it. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You do you, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's all I'm telling folks who are looking in or listening in on this is that you got a dirt bath coming. No one cares outside of maybe your parents or your close loved ones, and some of them can't even really comprehend what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? They love you, they want you to be happy, but they don't care. You're trying to make a video game, so what? Are you happy? Are you alive? Are you maimed? That's really what they care about, right? So your goal is to do your work and then show your work.
Yeah.
And know your lane. Like my lane, I'm probably not going to be very effective doing other people's work at this point in my life.
Right. Yeah, of course. Because you've done that.
I knew it 5 years ago, but now I really know it. So every time I move away from doing my work, things go bad. When I move towards doing my work, things go good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Sorry,
I mean,
I rambled a bit towards the end there.
No. I think everything you said was very apt. I think it was very on point for what we were trying to talk about. And I think for me, I know the thing I learned or I'm learning now is that, I can learn 2D and learn how to draw because, I want a job working for XYZ company or XYZ game or whatever. But the stories then I can tell with my own work is something that will be more powerful in the end because, even like YouTube, it's funny to think, millennia from now when I'm not here, that people can maybe still look back on these interviews and see part of like what I've done, and it's really powerful to me, and that's why I took to YouTube initially because it is a legacy you can leave behind. So I think it's the same with your work. If you focus on just what you can create for other people, then that is maybe detrimental to yourself because you have these stories to tell.
Detrimental. I wouldn't say detrimental.
Not bad, but like you want to be able to take that.
If that's what people want to do,
of course.
Dave Filoni plays in George Lucas's sandbox. Thank God. Thank God Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau play in George Lucas's sandbox. Right?
Yeah. Oh, Favreau. Favreau's my hero, man. He is absolutely my hero.
Thank God.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have the MCU. We wouldn't have The Mandalorian, which some people have issues with Mandalorian. I'm like, Mandalorian is like pizza.
Mandalorian is one of the best things ever.
A bad slice of pizza.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Because it's pizza, right? That's what Star Wars is. It's pizza, right? When it's good, it's really good. When it's bad, it's still good. It's Star Wars.
Yeah.
Now you can have some bad pizza, but she's still gonna. How many times have you had a bad slice of pizza, but you kept eating it?
Oh yeah.
It's pizza, right? So I would just say, as we come to a close here, it's know yourself. Know who you are. I'm now 54, telling anyone who's 54 and younger. So you can't say no one told you.
Yeah.
Know yourself. Know your value. Don't be a butthead. Right? And understand that sometimes people can say you're a butthead, but they're buttheads. This is an amazing thing. I didn't realize that people are like, well, I was told this and told that. Then you realize you were pretty much of a butthead too. Meaning, just do your work, man.
Yeah.
Do your work. Finish your work. Get the work out. Because people will only help you to do your work. And it's going to sound weird. People will help you or show interest in your work when they know you don't need them to do the work and when they see value in the work. It's like high school. Take the same modality of what you get from high school, I don't know what the equivalent is in Scotland, and apply it to the visual effects, the digital arts industry, and you've got it. Be confident in yourself. Be confident and improve and grow your skills so you can have mastery over what you want to do, and just finish. Finish and deliver to market.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the thing that, like you said earlier, that if you don't finish these stories, if you don't tell them, then they will disappear. So, 100%, I agree. Well, I think that's a great note to end on. And again, Tim, thanks for giving up your time to talk to us.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure. Yeah.
And finally, go buy my book, man. Infinitum and Afrofuturist Tale. Everywhere, apparently. Which is weird.
Everywhere. Well, I'll leave all the the links to Tim's work below and all the links to his books and everything else, so you guys check out that work and make sure you grab a copy of the book. I'm sure I will also. Again, thanks again for trying to come on. If you guys have made it to this point in the interview, thanks for sticking about, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions for any future episodes, just hit me up down in the comments. Let me know. We're on Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, iTunes, loads of things. Just let us know what you thought. And thanks to Tim again. Thanks to you guys. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.